The crowd roared as the countdown began, and Mark Sullivan realized he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Neon lights flashed across the small-town square in Austin, Texas, and strangers cheered wildly for something that felt completely absurd to him. A banner stretched across the stage read, "Longest Kiss Challenge, win $10,000 for your story." His palms were sweating, his heart was pounding, and standing across from him, equally nervous but determined, was a woman he had met only 3 hours earlier. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness and second chances, and in the unexpected ways life can change in a single moment, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that miracles don't always look the way we expect. Mark hadn't planned to be there that night. He was a 35-year-old single father who barely had time to breathe, let alone join some wild public dare. His world revolved around his 7-year-old son, Noah. Since losing his wife in a car accident 4 years earlier, Mark had carried grief like a quiet shadow. He worked double shifts at a hardware store, skipped meals so Noah could have the cereal he liked, and stayed up late helping with homework even when his eyes burned with exhaustion. Romance wasn't just off the table. It felt like something that belonged to a different lifetime. He had only come downtown because Noah's babysitter canceled at the last minute, and his neighbor, Grace Turner, offered to watch him for a few hours so Mark could get some air. Grace insisted he needed a break, that living only for responsibility would slowly break him. Mark didn't argue. He had been feeling that fracture inside for months. The festival had been loud, colorful, and almost overwhelming. Food trucks lined the streets, country music echoed between buildings, and couples laughed as if life were simple. Mark felt out of place, like a man observing joy through thick glass. He was about to leave when he saw the stage and heard the host shouting about the prize money. $10,000. The number hit him like lightning. Noah needed a minor surgery for a hearing issue. Insurance would cover most of it, but the remaining bills were still a mountain Mark didn't know how to climb. He had been secretly taking on extra shifts, hiding overdue notices in a kitchen drawer. $10,000 could mean relief, it could mean breathing again. The rules were simple and ridiculous. 2 consenting adults had to remain in a kiss for as long as possible. The last couple standing would win. It was meant to be romantic, playful, maybe even silly. Mark almost laughed at the irony. Romance was the one thing he felt incapable of. That was when he bumped into Rachel Collins. She spilled lemonade on his shirt. He apologized even though it wasn't his fault. She laughed, a soft, genuine sound that caught him off guard. Rachel was 32, a pediatric nurse from Houston who had come to Austin to visit her sister. She had signed up for the challenge on a dare from her sibling but didn't have a partner. There was something about her eyes. They weren't flirtatious or calculating. They were kind. When the host shouted that a few contestants still needed partners, Rachel surprised them both by suggesting they join together. She admitted she could use the money too. Her mother's medical treatments had drained her savings. It wasn't about romance, she said. It was about survival. Mark hesitated. The idea felt reckless, but when he thought of Noah adjusting the volume on the television because he couldn't hear clearly, something inside him hardened with determination. And that was how he ended up on stage, under blinding lights, with the entire town watching. The first few minutes were awkward. Mark's mind raced with guilt. Was this dishonoring his late wife's memory? Was he betraying something sacred? But as the minutes stretched, the noise of the crowd faded. What remained was the steady warmth of another human being who understood desperation. Couples began to drop out. Some laughed and gave up. Others grew uncomfortable. The Texas humidity didn't help. 30 minutes passed, then 45. Mark felt Rachel's hand tighten around his. It wasn't romantic, it was supportive. They were 2 exhausted souls holding each other up in front of hundreds of strangers. An hour passed, his legs trembled, his back ached. He wondered if he could endure more. The host's voice echoed like it came from underwater. There were only 3 couples left. In that suspended moment, something shifted inside Mark. For years, he had closed himself off from any possibility of connection. He had convinced himself that loving again meant erasing the past. But standing there, fighting for something bigger than pride, he realized love wasn't a limited resource. It didn't replace, it expanded. When the second-to-last couple finally pulled away, the crowd exploded. Mark and Rachel were the final pair, 90 minutes. The tension was unbearable. Sweat trickled down his neck. His breathing was uneven. Rachel's fingers pressed into his shoulder as if silently saying, "Stay," and he did. When the final buzzer sounded, confetti cannons erupted above them. The roar of the crowd felt like a wave crashing over his doubts. They had won. Mark pulled back, stunned. The applause felt surreal. Rachel's face was flushed, her eyes shining not with romance but with relief. The host shoved a microphone toward them, asking what motivated them to endure so long. Mark swallowed hard and did something he hadn't done publicly in years. He told the truth. He spoke about Noah, about hospital bills, about being afraid of failing as a father. The crowd grew quiet. Then Rachel spoke about her mother's cancer treatments, about watching the strongest woman she knew become fragile. Her voice trembled, but she didn't cry. By the time they stepped off the stage, something far more important than prize money had changed. Strangers approached them with hugs. A local business owner offered to cover part of Noah's remaining medical expenses. A retired surgeon in the crowd asked for Mark's contact information, saying he might be able to help reduce the surgical costs through connections. Someone else started an online fundraiser before the night was even over. Mark had joined the dare for $10,000. He left with something immeasurably greater. In the weeks that followed, life transformed in ways he couldn't have predicted. The community's support exceeded the prize money. Noah's surgery was scheduled sooner than expected. The fear that had haunted Mark for months slowly loosened its grip. And Rachel didn't disappear after that night. They began meeting for coffee, then for park walks with Noah. She never tried to replace anyone in his life. She simply showed up, consistently, gently. One evening, months later, Mark watched Rachel kneel to Noah's height, patiently helping him practice reading after his surgery. The late afternoon sun painted them in gold. Noah laughed, a clear, bright sound Mark hadn't heard so confidently before. That was the moment he realized the longest kiss of his life hadn't been about endurance. It had been about surrendering, fear. It had been about letting hope back in. If this story has touched your heart so far, please pause and comment the word hope below. Let's fill the comments with reminders that second chances are real. Mark eventually told Rachel about the guilt he had felt that night. She listened without judgment. She reminded him that honoring the past didn't mean refusing the future. Love wasn't betrayal, it was courage. A year after the festival, in that same town square in Austin, Mark stood under the string lights again. This time, there was no contest, no pressure. Just Noah holding a small box with nervous excitement. Mark knelt in front of Rachel, not because of a dare, not because of money, but because he had learned something vital. Sometimes life forces you into uncomfortable moments to reveal what your heart has been too afraid to see. She said yes through tears. The crowd that night had been loud and chaotic. But this time, the only sound that mattered was Noah's joyful cheer and the steady rhythm of a man who finally believed he deserved happiness again. Before this story ends, if it moved you, if it reminded you that kindness can ripple farther than we imagine, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. Mark once thought he had joined a foolish public stunt. Instead, he stepped into a moment that cracked open his guarded heart. He discovered that even in the most unexpected places, under neon lights surrounded by strangers, healing can begin. And sometimes the longest kiss isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in the courage to love again.